Greetings and welcome, my friends. This is the one and only SugiJRPG here once again, and today I have great pleasure to be reviewing Kingdom Hearts 3 for PS4. And there will be some very light minor spoilers included on this review, but nothing that would ruin you the story or the gameplay experience, more so info and details about the game's features and stuff. And people wondering, do I have to play the previous games before playing Kingdom Hearts 3? And to answer that question, well, there is a recap feature included inside the game which kind of recaps the story so far. Kind of recaps Kingdom Hearts 1, Chain of Memories, Kingdom Hearts 2, Birth by Sleep, and Dreamed Up Distance. And the problem with recaps in general is kind of like dating. You don't date somebody for 1 week and then decide, let's get married. Because the problem there is, you have to let emotions build up in a natural way. And by watching recaps inside the game, or even the YouTube ones, which I watch, which were a bit longer, it doesn't relay you the emotions of the characters and the journey that they have gone through, all of these hours of gameplay that you get to see, and the dialogue that the characters have with each other, and how they help each other, how they develop their character relationship with each other. And you don't see that in the recaps, which creates a situation when you see these characters returning in this Kingdom Hearts 3, you don't really appreciate the reunification of some of the people, or the feelings that some of the people have with each other is something that kind of necessarily relay, because of the fact that you don't really know them. You don't know the characters, you don't know all the struggles and the dialogues that they went through. That's why recaps are kind of bad in that sense. But if you don't play it for the story, then okay, you may watch the recaps then. And what are the most important games? Obviously you don't have to play exactly every game. Kingdom Hearts 2 is the most important in terms of the story, and By Sleep is also very important. Kingdom Hearts 1, not so much, as aside from the character relationships. And Dreamed Up Distance, some people have said that that's very important. I wouldn't say it's that big of an importance. I mean, it's somewhat important, and all these games kind of like build up some of the characters and side characters inside the game, but in terms of getting the hang of the whole story, the most important factors, play Birth by Sleep, Kingdom Hearts 2. Those are the most important, and I do recommend playing them on the release order. That gives you more appreciation how the combat has evolved and so on. But let's get into the Kingdom Hearts 3, and obviously, as we kind of touch the story already here, it continues where Dreamed Up Distance kind of left off. Now Riku is a Keyblade master and Sora failed the exam, and now they go on journey to find the lost Keyblade masters, which is Ventus, Aqua, and Terra. And they will go through, the new worlds, and well, Organization 13, the real one, is now here, and there are pretty much throwing wrenches at their plan, and they want to kind of open Kingdom Hearts again, which seems to be always the story. And that's kind of like the very, very basic rundown of the story. I don't want to ruin it too much for you. There are some plot twists included, but I'm going to tell you the story, aspects about the story I'm going to review a bit later. So let's go into the gameplay aspect. So the combat is probably the best one out of I played on all the Kingdom Hearts games. As I was playing the first game, it was very outdated, the camera work wasn't really good, and the whole how you used your abilities and everything felt very clunky. And now they have reached a point where it's very smooth to play. How you use your quick controls and quick tab of potions and items and magic, it's very good. And also the AP system where you learn new abilities and set up your kind of loadout of sorts is very nice as well. There's also synthesizing thing where you kind of get drops from, the enemies in the game, and this allows you to craft items and essentially allows you to also upgrade every weapon that you receive in the game. So kind of in a one way, there's not like a one weapon that is above everybody else, is that you have multiple weapons that have different types of traits and different types of abilities, which will give you different type of combo forms, which are very nice in my opinion. And some of them obviously are different in gameplay styles, so there's a bit of variety if you want to play the game again in a different difficulty. which I think there's 3 difficulties. You have the easy, normal, and then you have the hard mode. I played it on normal because I didn't want it too easy, because actually the previous games can be quite easy if you play it on the very easiest, and there's not really any difficulty whatsoever. But the normal difficulty gives you some challenge, and I probably did die at least once or twice during the game, and there are some legit, like, somewhat, at least the optional boss that you get to face is actually very, very hard. And I liked the skill systems and synthesizing and locking and everything like this was really, improved from the previous games. It takes a lot of influences from every game. It's like a combination of all the previous games coming into one. And the air combat, which was somewhat criticized by some people, the smoothness of the combos, I didn't quite feel that. I think the game was fluid from start to finish, and I felt I had control over my character, and I felt that the controls for the most part and the camera was really, really smooth. And in terms of the actual other aspects of the game, there's a lot of mini games inside the game, which I actually didn't like very much. You have this sort of a old world, which is this sort of I think it's LCD games, yeah. And those, well, I didn't like those actually. They were very grindy to me. But playing them through doesn't actually even give you any type of like rewards to my understanding or these huge things. But they're like a mini game and something that you could chime in more hours if you want to. And there are also collectibles inside the game, and there's these sort of things like battle gates, which include like new, essentially like raid things where you have to defend yourself against the massive waves of Heartless, and these were kind of like the late game content, and that also includes the optional boss that I was talking about, which I didn't beat because you have to solo it. That's the one problem that I had with the game design, which has been kind of consistent throughout all the games, is that you bring Donald and Goofy around and you put them abilities, you put them items, but they don't necessarily appear on the very big major fights, that they're fucking irrelevant. It's like Sora alone on most of these major fights that happen throughout the game, so I think there's a contradiction there in terms of the story, that Sora is fighting some of these fights alone, even though you build it up Goofy and Donald to be characters. And the Gummi world has been improved from what it was in the first and the second game, and third game as well. I think that this was very nice, actually. It's like a mini game of its own, a world of its own, and there's a lot of details and bosses also on it, and it kind of created this sort of an open world map instead of like this classic world map where we just have this big thing where you move around the world. This is just an actual space and meteors which you go around and do things. And I actually liked it. At first I didn't, but once I got like bit powered up with my ship, I liked it. But I don't like the ship building aspect of the game. To me it's dumb, and I don't want to spend so much time on a mini game. So to me, like, building your own ship is kind of random, and I kind of always use the blueprints. I think that's the way to go. I think that's what most people do. And the game is pretty long. It took me 40 hours. Granted, I was doing a lot of grinding and other stuff, and I kind of went for a very completionist run. When you have this sort of photograph mode, which you can take selfies and stuff, you have these hidden Mickey icons around the worlds, and once you collect them all, you get a secret ending. So just so you know, you might want to do that. But the amount of photos that you have to take changes based on the difficulty you have. The easiest difficulty requires you to have all, and the higher difficulties require you to have less of those photos taken. And in terms of the late game content, I kind of feel it's kind of inconsistent. The battle gates were something that were criticized by some of the people, and to my understanding, there has been more than one boss in optional bosses in the other games. There's not like a true late game content, and there's no new game plus where you essentially play through the hard mode with your level up character, which is something that I would have personally maybe wanted to do. And there are some aspects of praisal and criticism inside the game. Graphics are really good. The level design is very, very good. The worlds look very akin to the ones that they look on Disney. Not all the worlds were equally fun. They offer very different types of, they had one gimmick that they offered, like on toy box, you get to be like operate these big machines, which allowed you, it's kind of like a first-person shooter. On Caribbean, you essentially get to mount a ship and you do ship battles. And there's also underwater stuff that you could like combat underwater and move underwater. And so there are some differences between some of the worlds. Some of them were kind of boring. Corona wasn't really that interesting, to be honest. And I never was a big fan of Frozen, so Arendelle was not really that good of either. But the level design aspects of it was good. Some of the things I would have wanted to see was Lion King World making a kind of big comeback. I'm not a furry though, but I think there were a lot of like furry fans who would have really wanted to see it come back. And it could have adapted the story of the second movie or the third movie, or even Lion Guard. People were expecting Marvel and Star Wars. We didn't get any of that. So some of the choices for the worlds were kind of bad. Like Monstropolis, the Monsters movie. I mean, that was not a good choice in terms of level design. It was really bad, okay? It was not a very fun world. There's nothing really cool about it, and I don't know why they decided to adapt that world specifically when they could have adapted something totally else, which was on the table. Olympus was really good level too. I enjoyed that very much. San Francisco was the only one that I have not seen the movie of, so that was okay. But to go back on the level design, the graphics were really good, and I did like the variety of the playstyle between the worlds. We offered something else, at least a mini game or something that would kind of fundamentally make them feel different. And decent music. I think that was songs that she contributed to the game were pretty good. I'm really addicted to the opening song, but otherwise, like, I don't say that there's like a lot of these amazing new tracks. They used a lot of the old tracks from the previous games. I enjoyed them, but it's not like this amazing soundtrack. And I have to understand that, Square has done really, really amazing tracks for the Final Fantasy games, so you don't see that really on that. But obviously, Uematsu was not involved, writing the songs on this game. And Final Fantasy characters were totally removed from this game. You don't see anything except Kupo, and this was very weird, and a lot of people were criticizing it. Maybe there's a story reconnect where they went into their other world or something. And to me, this didn't really make a lot of sense to remove them story-wise. That was like a very random thing to do. And the director said like there was not room for them or something else. I mean, they just could have been a models and seen at least on flashbacks or something. But completely removing them just didn't add up to me at all. Why introduce them in the first place if they're not going to play a part in the story? Maybe they will do in the next game or so. And kind of summarizing some of the story criticism that I have for the game. So the characters don't truly receive a lot of development. I mean, this is like 5 games where you play as Sora, and Sora gets very minimal character development. It's pretty much the same character from start to finish, and it doesn't go through... It feels like he is going through the same realizations on each game, where there's a moment of doubt, and then he comes back again, and he yabs about the hearts. And also, I don't like the fact that all Donald, Goofy, and Sora, they're clueless as some of the newcomers to this franchise playing the series in terms of the story. They're totally clueless about the organization and the characters. And they're not very smart. I think the dynamic of having 3 characters which are not very smart is not very fun. You would have to like a one guy in the group who's actually like really smart. And Mickey is kind of smart guy, and that's why it would make a lot of more sense to make Mickey part of the main trio or something, because Donald is not super smart. Goofy seems to be the smartest among the 3, but he's not even very smart, and he makes, dumbass comments most of the time. And Donald and Goofy don't really receive any character development whatsoever either. And that's the kind of the problem with the game, is that if you're gonna do like this multi-franchise game, you have to give some character development to these characters. It just can't be the same bullshit rehashed over and over again. And other aspect that I have criticism for the story is, I mean, the good thing about these characters is that they still relay the emotions, and you feel for them and you care for them, and to a certain degree, for Axel and Riku and everything. I mean, Riku is probably the one that received the most character development, I would say, throughout the series, and he is like much more mature as the series has gone. But Sora is pretty much the same, and Donald and Goofy also. But the issue here is that In terms of the story itself, there's a beginning of the story where you get some of the tidbits what's going on, and then you gradually meet the organization 13 members and Xehanort and all these evil guys. And then everything just happens in the last 5 hours of the game. It's just this big boss palooza, this end game, the last 2 worlds, which you don't get to explore. They're just full of bosses and fights. There's nothing else. It's just like 10 boss fights in a row or something. And that's not very smart from gameplay perspective. From a story perspective, it might make some sense, but for me, I felt that it's just that you packed all the important events to the end. That's what happened on Kingdom Hearts 2. Was it Castle of Oblivion or Hollow Bastion? I don't remember the last world, but everything that took place there was the most important, story segments. And in most other games, there are a lot of things that happen on the beginning and on the middle, and then yes, you have a lot of things that happen on the end. But to me, in Kingdom Hearts, always seems to follow the same formula, that the progress and the pacing of the story is very slow, or nothing really happens before the end. And yes, the worlds have their own story which they tell, but they're not connected to the real story, the big story. What happens on Arendelle or Olympus doesn't play into the whole story, the big story. And overall, I would say the game is good. Best combat out of all Kingdom Hearts games. It was enjoyable to play. I never got tired of it. The combat is very fluid and fun for the most part. But leveling up necessarily is not that fun, because the gameplay's end-game content is not maybe that rewarding as some people would expect it to be. And yes, there's the crafting, and then there's the Gummi ship and the other mini games, which can offer you up to 50 hours of gameplay, depending on how hard difficult you're playing it on and so on. But it was a good game. I enjoyed it. But it does have some criticism for some of these world choices that they did, and also for the story, which I like the story. I like the premise of it, the key plays, the hearts and everything. That's smart. And in this time it wasn't like super confusing or anything. It was a lot more clear in terms of the story, so they improved that. But the issue here definitely was the fact that you just can't build up all the major events on the end, and that should have been like gradually. There should have been like a big event on middle of the game, but they didn't do that. They should have done. I don't know how they would have written that, but I don't know. But it's not the most perfect game in terms of the story, and I thought the game would end, but no. This is just the end of the saga. The original, Taskmaster Keyblade things, which were explored in the Union, they get a bit of an ending scene where you're gonna get explored, and there's also then a secret ending which kind of gives you a bit of a hint what's gonna happen on the next game. And I hope the next game is truly going to be on PS4, but it might take till the PS5. And one thing that I would love to see is Kairi and Axel obviously play a big part. They get their own key plates in Kingdom Hearts 3. But the issue is that they kind of are like really gone, and there's a couple of cutscenes that they will see. But it would be nice to see that there was a DLC mission for these two, which would explore them. That would have been a very, very nice thing to see. And maybe we'll see this sort of spin-off that will focus on these two a lot more than Riku, Aqua, or Sora. I would love to see that bit more, maybe in the next game. But thanks for watching this review. Hopefully it was insightful and I went into detail in many aspects of the game as possible. I still recommend it. It's a great game, and especially for the fans and the non-fans alike. Obviously you have to do the chores of playing the old games or watching the recaps to really appreciate the character relationships. Otherwise, it's not that great of a game. I played it for the story. But thanks for watching. I will see you guys next time on the next review. Make sure to subscribe, and if you're interested, check out my Kingdom Hearts 2 review as well. Cheers!